what can be done to alleviate the pressure the communal farmers is experiencing in terms of export restrictions and in terms of the foot and mouth outbreak and the lack of exports to China, because that is their market. So I really want to touch on that in a little bit as well. But if you look at production, and this is the previous past season, the 2020-21 year, 44 million kilograms of wool produced in South Africa. Okay, this is greasy wool production, and Jock, I'm not really going to refer to the Sustainable Cape Wool Standard, but I really want to touch on something else, and that's what Dr. Paul Swan mentioned. And I think it's very important, and I don't know if everybody picked up on the point that he made. And that was the work the IWTO is currently doing in terms of the sustainability standards. Now, there's a task team that's been formed to look at that and the cooperation and basically the requirements or possible requirements that the IWTO can put in place. And Jeff is here as well, the chairman of the Sustainable Practices Working Group. So it's a subcommittee of that working group. And I think the work that's being done there is going to become very important for the global wool sector. So it's really not something we must just glance over. And the other thing I want to say is there's really good cooperation between ourselves and Textile Exchange and between ourselves and the other standards. And I think it was really a huge step forward for a representative from Textile Exchange to be included as an observer on that sustainable task team. So I really think we're making huge strides going forward. And where there are synergies and value to be added, we need to look at it. And I think it's critically important. I think this is a slide that Leon really likes. And we can even go further back, Leon, to when you started. And the progress that's been made from 2004 up to the previous season. And yes, there were some big challenges in the 2019-20 and also in 2021. Firstly, foot and mouth disease that broke out. Secondly, COVID. And coupled with that, quite a drought as well. But there you can see 5.4 million kilograms of wool produced. And that is significant. Leon, I think it amounts probably to about 13% of production at the moment. But really huge strides that's been made. And Mbacha mentioned yesterday, Mbacha, I think 521 or 527 sheds that you visited in the last year. I think if we look at our stats in total, 1,263 active shearing sheds at the moment. So it's significant. And the amount of sheds that you've reached is significant. Now, this is an interesting picture. We go back to 2018-19, 54% of our wool went to China. 2019, just over 70%. And 2020-21, just about 80%. Of course, that 2018-19 was the effect of the foot and mouth disease outbreak, which had a huge impact. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if 80% of our wool goes to one destination and we can't export, we have a problem, a big problem. And one of the problems that's associated with that is the lack of processing capacity. And I think we can talk for a whole day about that. And what has happened in the industry and globally with regards to wool processing. I think you would have heard Giovanni Schneider say as well, the lack of processing capacity in Europe at the moment is a huge challenge. So it's a global challenge that we're going to face, and that's not going to be solved in the short term. So I think this has been discussed at a couple of NWGA meetings, but in terms of a new structure we're looking at to take our transformation initiatives forward. And this is something that's been discussed at Cape Wool's level and also at the Wool Forum last year and by the Wool Trust. And the Trust is actually having a meeting tomorrow where they will once again discuss the formation of the Empowerment Trust. Now, I know the mower industry is here, and I think it's a success story for the mower industry in terms of the Empowerment Trust and the successes that they've had with that structure. And this is something very similar. And a lot has been said about the genetic improvement program, and maybe it's a little bit early to say anything, but we are going to take a request to the Wool Trust to try and get this Empowerment Trust kick-started, and specifically with the idea of a genetic improvement funding initiative, which can actually kick-start it without depending on government. I think what we have seen over the years is that if you utilize your own funding and you put your own money in and actually have a recipe for success, it is much easier to get that donor funding in. So this Empowerment Trust will consist of 7 trustees. This is the proposal, representative of all the industry bodies, as well as the Department of Agriculture and the National Agricultural Marketing Council. So this is something that will be debated at the trust level, and we are on about the 3rd version of the trust deed to start implementing this new structure, which I think will be very, very exciting. So I'm going to talk about transformation tracking and the CWSA. And what I must maybe do before I start with this is really express a word of thanks to Dr. Stuart Vurry. Stuart, I can't see you. He's got his hand up. Dr. Vurry joined us in the beginning of February. He retired as a state veterinarian at the end of October last year. And he was the state vet that actually put the measures in place to get us export ready again to China in 2019. Now, Stuart has also been played a very instrumental role with the production advisors to actually fine-tune what we want to implement in the communal sector. So it'll be known as the SCWS and the SCWSC, and it will be identified as that in the catalogue, which will indicate it is from a communal shed. Firstly, I want to focus, and it might be a little bit small, but what we've done is we've built a platform. And on the one hand, we said, what can we do to make it easier for the production advisors to track their progress? And on the other hand, what can we do in terms of a standard to be implemented that is of value within the communal sector? We all know it's quite challenging, and I think it's been very interesting to have those rounds at the sheds and with the production advisors. And I think we're on about version 6, if I'm not mistaken, of the communal questionnaire. We haven't even rolled it out. So it's really been a very involved process to make sure that we can have an implementable program in the communal sector. And the SCWS is going to fit into this IT platform. So it is a very comprehensive platform where we're going to record. It's going to have a back office. We can do surveys. And the equipment that each shed has and the equipment that each shed will need. And there you can see an equipment analysis, the training that has been done within each shed, and the clip analysis of each shed. So it will be an IT platform that the advisors can utilize to really implement or make their task easier. And included in that, the study group results, and linked into that, the Sustainable K-Pool standard. The CLIP classing report will be in that platform, as well as a CLIP fault report. So this is really going to become a comprehensive source of data and information for the advisors to utilize. So just to show you, this is the equipment list. This is what it will look like. whether there's a concrete dip tank, a fiberglass tank, other dip tanks. And this will really, you will see there's an estimated cost allocated for each of these infrastructure requirements as well. So should donation funding be received, or the Department of Agriculture comes on board, it will be very easy to identify where the needs are and how you can best allocate that funding to a specific shed. There, once again, in terms of genetics, shearing equipment, and the shearing shed structure, what it is. So just in terms of the training management, what training has been done and what training is still needed to be done within that specific shed. So this will be a tool that the advisors can utilize to schedule that for each shed. So then we come to the Sustainable Capable Standard, the communal for the communal sector. And as I said, this has been quite a process. So what we've done is we've created the assessment, we've divided it into 8 categories. Those sessions were held with the production advisors, and pilot assessments were conducted in the sheds. And I think I have to say that the feedback that we received was that it was extremely well received by those shed committees and the chairman of those growers associations. So I think the communal advisors have just received their tablets back. It's all being done electronically as well. And there's now 60 assessments have now been loaded for them to be conducted. So the pilot phase is finished. It is now work to be done. And as I said, I think it's been very well received by the shearing sheds. So I think whatever we implement, and ourselves as an industry body, we have to ensure it is, well, firstly, it is meaningful, and secondly, it is implementable, because otherwise you are creating huge trouble for yourself. So this is what it looks like. The first category is just general, and it's very much a needs analysis relating or fitting back into the first section that I showed you of the transformation tracking. Category 2 is animal handling. Category 3, animal welfare and husbandry. Then biosecurity and health. And I think Dr. Varry has already compiled quite a detailed vaccination program, Stuart, if I'm not mistaken, for those sheds, which will now be distributed to them as well. Category 5 is shearing, and this has been a huge challenge. I think probably the biggest challenge of the whole assessment in how that is implemented within the sheds. Category 6 is the environment, and we're really looking at ways to make this grow and to filter down to individual farmers and herders, because there's some very nice geospatial information that we can utilize in this whole process. So this is something that's hopefully is going to grow and really add value at the end of the day, not only for the shed, but for the individual participants and farmers within those sheds as well. And I think that's critically important. Then social, in terms of human resources and interaction with your environment. I think child labour becomes a question that is raised often. And then the last category, the general assessment and management of the shed, and the information provided to the auditor at the time. So we will follow the same principle as we do on the commercial sector, also starting with third-party verification as soon as we have enough sheds assessed. So just in terms of traceability in the future and what we see, because I think it becomes very important. And I think a lot of the commercial farmers understand it, it is as important and is going to become as important for the communal farmers. Because ultimately, SK, that's what we spoke about yesterday, is create that alternative markets for the product. So what is supply chain transparency? And this is what we want to create. It, in essence, means that a business knows exactly what is happening at every stage of its supply chain and communicates clearly stated, factually backed information about its supply chain operations internally and externally. That's what we want to achieve. So that's why the wool industry has embarked on a blockchain, which will be funded by Cape Wools, or the initial platform will be funded by the wool industry. And it will carry all the tags. So RWS, Abalusi, ZQ if there is, and Sustainable Cape Wool Standard. Because what we really want to create is that traceable link back to the origin of the wool. And we want to make it as accessible as possible to the value chain. I think if we can achieve that, we will achieve a lot. And I think somebody mentioned it, I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, in terms of life cycle assessments. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on carbon and carbon emissions and carbon offsets. So Cape Wools have approved a project where we will now be embarking on a wool life cycle assessment. We will start off with a pilot of 20 farms. Those 20 farms will include both commercial farms and communal sheds. So we will not be reinventing the wheel. We will also be utilizing existing data that's been done in Australia. And the work that's been done by Dr. Stephen Wiedemann for many years on wool LCA specifically. So a very exciting project for us, and I think it's going to be very important for the future of the wool industry in South Africa. And in this initial pilot phase, we will definitely be focusing on some of the communal shearing sheds as well. And this is where the future is going. I know some role players in the market really far advanced, probably far ahead of the South African wool industry. But we have to do this. It's something that will benefit the industry in the long term.